C-suite. Welcome to the show.
Picture this. You've snagged a 7:30 p.m. reservation at that new, impossible-to-get-into bistro. The lighting is low, the dry-aged ribeye is perfect, and the Pinot Noir is breathing. Suddenly, the ambiance is shattered, not by a dropped tray, but by a toddler throwing a tantrum in the next booth, while an iPad blares Cocomelon at maximum volume. The parents? Totally unfazed, buried in their own phones. It's a scene playing out in dining rooms across the country, and restaurant owners have finally reached their breaking point. Welcome to the Kitchen to C-Suite podcast, the show where we dissect the raw grit of hospitality operations and scale it into boardroom strategy. Our hosts today, they are deep diving headfirst into one of the most polarizing, fiercely debated trends sweeping the hospitality industry, the kid ban. From fine dining establishments in Manhattan to trendy brunch spots in Austin, operators are drawing a line in the sand. We aren't just talking about charging a bad parenting fee anymore. Restaurants are outright outlawing screaming toddlers and the toxic digital tabs keeping them quiet. But this isn't just a story about unruly kids and frustrated diners. This is a cold, hard business calculation. What they are unpacking today, the economics of ambiance, how a single disruptive table can tank your average check size, kill secondary alcohol sales, and ruin the lifetime value of your core demographic. The staffing crisis connection. In an industry already struggling to retain talent, how asking front-of-house staff to double as unpaid babysitters is driving burnout. PR nightmare versus marketing genius. We'll look at the data behind the backlash. When a restaurant bans children under 10, do they actually lose money? Or do their bookings skyrocket from grateful child-free diners? We aren't in the business of just selling food anymore. We are selling an escape. If a guest is paying $150 a head, they aren't paying to hear your child's iPad. Grab your espresso, quiet your devices, and let's get down to business and join our host in the discussion about terrible toddlers, toxic tabs, why restaurants are outlawing bad parenting.
You know, there is this very specific, almost universal feeling that I think most of us have experienced at least once.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, where you finally secured a reservation at like a genuinely nice restaurant, not just a quick bite, but a place you've probably been looking forward to for weeks.
Right, like an event.
Exactly. You've arranged your schedule. Maybe you've gone through the whole hassle of interviewing and hiring a babysitter.
Which is an ordeal in itself.
Oh, totally. And you've navigated the evening traffic, you found parking, and you are, fully prepared to pay premium top-tier prices for a curated experience.
You're ready to invest in a good night.
Yeah. So you sit down and the environment is just perfect. The lighting is, that dim, warm glow, and the ambiance is humming with low conversation and the clinking of wine glasses. You are just ready to decompress.
Right.
And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a child at the table right next to yours decides the narrow dining room aisle is like their own personal Olympic racetrack.
It's the worst. It completely shatters the illusion of the space.
It really does.
It's just this immediate, jarring sensory disruption that pulls you right out of the experience you're paying for.
Exactly. Or maybe they aren't running. Maybe they're sitting in the booth, but they're using like a heavy metal fork as a drumstick on a beautiful custom-milled wooden table. Just bang, bang, bang.
Relentless.
I can hear it now. Right. And the parents, this is the part that always gets me. The parents are sitting right there, less than 2 feet away, just staring blankly at the glowing screens of their smartphones.
Completely tuned out.
Completely tuned out to the destruction happening right in front of them. We have all been there. You exchange that look with your dining partner across the table.
That wide-eyed look of, like, is anyone going to do anything about this?
Yes. But for a very long time, decades, really, the answer to that unspoken question was a quiet, resigned no.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The unwritten social contract of dining out just dictated that the restaurant absorb the cost of that chaos.
Yeah.
It was viewed as, well, the inevitable cost of doing business in a public-facing industry. You grin, you bear it.
You sweep up the broken glass.
You sweep up the glass at the end of the shift. You try to buff the scratches out of the woodwork. And you just desperately hope the disrupted tables around that family don't leave scathing reviews on the internet.
But, and this is why we are doing this deep dive today, that paradigm is fracturing. We are seeing a brand new honestly highly controversial trend emerging across the hospitality industry right now.
It's a massive shift.
It is. Restaurants are drawing a firm line in the sand, or, well, more accurately, on the receipt.
Right on the bill.
Yeah. Rather than eating the cost of a ruined table or a broken dish, business owners are physically adding the cost of a child's bad behavior, like the actual dollar amount of the property damage, directly to the parent's final dinner bill.
And this is causing an absolute earthquake in the industry and on social media, too.
Oh, the internet is losing its mind.
Because it challenges everything we historically assumed about public etiquette, you know? The entitlement of the consumer and those hard legal boundaries between a private business and a paying customer.
So our mission for today's deep dive for you listening is to unpack exactly how and why restaurants have the legal and structural right to charge parents for the damages caused by their uncontrolled children.
And it isn't just a petty squabble over spilled milk.
No, not at all.
It's this fascinating intersection of centuries-old property law, the razor-thin economics of the modern hospitality industry, and a massive cultural shift in parenting.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to jump right into a specific, highly publicized incident that really acted as a catalyst for this broader conversation.
The Chez Jou case.
Yes, exactly. This takes us to Foster City, California, which is a fairly affluent, family-heavy suburb in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
There's an upscale but traditionally family-friendly Chinese restaurant there called Chez Jou, owned by a man named Yu Su.
Yeah, and he made quite the statement.
He really did. Out of nowhere, he updated all of his menus with a warning that just went absolutely viral, racked up millions of views, sparked endless debates. I actually want to read the exact text he placed right at the top of the menu because he pulled zero punches.
The phrasing is incredibly deliberate.
It is.
It reads less like a polite request and much more like a binding legal disclaimer, which, as we'll discuss later, is exactly the point.
Right. So it says in bold lettering, right where you would normally look for the appetizers, quote, "Please control your children. Chez Jou is a family-friendly restaurant. However, we are not a playground."
Setting the boundary right there.
Exactly. It goes on. "Please ensure children remain seated at all times and respectful of fellow guests and the dining environment. Running around, shouting, making noise with utensils, etc. will not be tolerated. Guests not respecting this policy may be asked to leave."
Fair enough, right?
But then, here's the kicker, the part that completely broke the internet. Quote, "We will hold parents financially liable for all damages caused by their children to restaurant property."
And the reason this exploded wasn't just because of the warning itself. I mean, we've all seen those signs that say, unattended children will be given an espresso and a free puppy.
Right, yeah, the joke signs.
Exactly. Those are jokes. Chez Jou wasn't joking. They actually enforced it.
They brought the receipts. Literally.
Literally. The restaurant publicly published itemized receipts online to prove that they were holding parents strictly accountable to the penny.
Looking at these receipts in our source materials is wild. We are talking about highly specific, itemized bills mixed right in with the food charges.
Yeah, it wasn't just a generic fine.
No. For instance, there was a $327.03 charge added to a bill after a child dropped and shattered a digital credit card terminal.
A massive expense.
Huge. Then there was a $109.38 fee for a tabletop that a child had actively defaced and carved up using metal dining utensils.
And they didn't just go after the massive hundreds of dollars equipment failures either.
Right, the teacup.
Yeah. They billed a family a highly specific $5.47 for a single broken teacup.
Which sounds petty at first glance, right?
It does, but the context surrounding that teacup is what matters immensely here. The owner clarified that this particular teacup wasn't just, accidentally bumped off the edge of the table by a clumsy kid.
Right.
It was knocked over and shattered because a child was actively jumping up and down on a dining booth seat like it was a trampoline while the parents completely ignored the situation.
So obviously you have to look at this and ask, what pushes a business owner to take such a drastic, incredibly public step?
Because the risk of internet backlash is huge.
Huge. The internet loves to leave one-star revenge reviews. Why risk your livelihood?
Well, according to the interviews with Yu Su, this was born out of sheer, unadulterated exhaustion.
Yeah, burnout.
He explicitly stated that his staff, like his servers, his bussers, his hosts, they were being forced to actively parent children on behalf of the actual parents. And he rightly pointed out that is not their job description. Not at all. He described the baseline standard of behavior that had, in his words, fallen off a cliff in recent years.
Off a cliff.
Yeah. He was watching children treat a sophisticated dining room like a literal obstacle course. We're talking about kids weaving through the aisles, playing tag under the tables, while parents just completely abdicated all personal responsibility.
And the specific incidents cited in these reports are truly jaw-dropping.
Oh, they are.
Let's go back to that $327 credit card terminal. The context there is that a parent actually picked up this complex piece of digital hardware, a standalone, functioning, expensive credit card reader, and handed it to their toddler to use as a toy just to keep the kid occupied at the table.
It blows my mind. Think about the mindset required to do that.
Yeah.
Handing commercial restaurant equipment to a toddler as a makeshift pacifier?
It's insane.
It just shows a profound lack of respect for the business.
Right.
And the aftermath is even more telling.
Oh, what happened after?
When the staff confronted the table about the shattered terminal, those parents actually tried to negotiate a lower replacement fee.
You're kidding.
No, they argued that because the machine wasn't brand new out of the box, they shouldn't have to pay full price.
Wow.
The restaurant literally had to threaten legal action just to be made whole for a piece of equipment a customer broke.
That is wild. But the issues go far beyond property damage, too. We're also talking about severe, alarming hygiene violations.
Oh, the diaper incident.
I read this next incident in the source material, and I actually had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. A parent explicitly chose to change a dirty baby diaper directly on top of a dining table.
In the main dining room.
Right in the main dining room, right next to other seated, eating customers who are trying to enjoy their meals.
It is the ultimate violation of shared public space. You have premium, carefully curated spaces being treated with absolute disregard for the business owner, the staff who have to sanitize that space, and the surrounding patrons who paid for a nice evening out. It perfectly illustrates the breaking point for the hospitality industry right now.
Okay, I hear all of that, and the behavior is undeniably atrocious. But let me play devil's advocate here on behalf of the listener, because I know what some people are thinking.
Sure.
Seeing a random itemized bill for a carved table added to your dinner tab feels a bit like getting a surprise mechanics bill when you just went in for an oil change.
It feels jarring.
It is deeply jarring. So can a restaurant physically just slap property damage onto a credit card charge alongside the pot stickers and the General Tso's chicken? Doesn't a business have to go through the police or take the customer to small claims court to get that money?
That specific mechanical question is exactly what ignited the internet firestorm.
Yeah.
People were calling these charges fines and aggressively questioning the legality of a private business imposing financial penalties on patrons on the spot without a judge or a jury.
Which sounds like frontier justice.
It does. But if we dive into the legal foundation of this practice, which the Legal Breakdown in Elite magazine outlines brilliantly, we find that the restaurant's actions are firmly rooted in established law.
So they aren't just making things up.
Not at all. They have robust, centuries-old legal mechanisms protecting their property.
Okay, so how does that actually work? Because to the average person, it does feel a bit lawless.
It all starts with the fundamental principle of private property. There is this very common, very pervasive misconception in our culture that because a restaurant is a place of public accommodation, meaning, anyone can walk through the front door, the public somehow has free reign in that space.
Right, like it's a public park or something.
Exactly. But legally, fundamentally, a restaurant is private property. The owner is extending a conditional invitation to the public to enter that space and dine, but that invitation comes with strict boundaries.
Sure.
An invitation to consume food is not a license to destroy the premises.
That tracks. I mean, you can't just walk into an acquaintance's living room, pull out a pocket knife, and start carving your initials into their coffee table, and then act shocked when they demand you pay for it.
Precisely. And the legal framework governing this is found in civil law, specifically the domain of torts.
Torts.
Right. Torts deal with civil wrongs, which includes property damage and negligence. If you break someone else's property, you have committed a tort, and you are liable to make them whole.
Okay.
Now, here is where the law gets slightly tricky when we introduce children into the equation.
Because kids can't be sued.
Exactly. Under standard civil law, minor children generally cannot be sued directly, nor can they be held financially liable in a meaningful way. They don't have their own assets, bank accounts, or legal standing.
So when a child commits property damage, what happens?
The legal framework immediately bypasses the child and looks directly at the supervisor.
It looks at the parents.
The parent, or whichever adult legal guardian, brought them into the establishment. This is based on a concept in common law called the duty of care.
Duty of care.
Yeah. Parents owe a general duty of care to properly supervise and control their minor children. This is especially true if the parent is aware, or reasonably should be aware, that the child's current actions could cause injury to someone else or damage to someone else's property.
Okay, let me make sure I'm getting this. So if you are sitting at a booth, sipping your cocktail, and actively watching your 7-year-old drag a metal fork back and forth across a custom-milled wooden tabletop, and you do absolutely nothing to stop it, you are legally negligent.
You have completely breached your duty of care.
Wow.
By sitting back and allowing that destructive behavior to continue unchecked, a court views you as actively endorsing or permitting that behavior. Therefore, the parent shifts the financial culpability for the tort squarely onto themselves.
That makes total sense.
And in many places, it actually goes even further than standard common law.
Hmm.
Many jurisdictions have specific written parental liability statutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. These are laws explicitly written by legislatures to hold parents civilly liable for the willful, malicious, or reckless destruction of property caused by their minor children.
Okay, so the law clearly says the parents owe the money for the damage. That part is solid. But that still doesn't quite explain the mechanism of the receipt.
Right, the on-the-spot billing.
Yeah. How does the restaurant bypass the month-long process of filing a lawsuit in small claims court, serving papers, going before a judge, and instead just put it on the menu bill right then and there?
That leap from the courtroom to the receipt relies on the power of implied contracts and a specific legal concept called bailment.
Bailment. Let's break that down, because I'm not familiar.
Sure, bailment is crucial here. It's the legal transfer of temporary possession of personal property. Think about handing your keys to a valet or giving your coat to a coat check.
Okay.
You still own the car, but the valet has temporary possession and a legal duty to take care of it.
Okay, so how does bailment apply to, like, eating a bowl of soup?
When a restaurant seats you, they're temporarily transferring the use of their physical property to you. They are providing you with a table, upholstered chairs, expensive glassware, metal cutlery, and in some cases, digital ordering screens.
Ah, I see.
You, the patron, are the bailee. You have a legal duty to exercise reasonable care over that property while it is in your temporary possession.
Right.
If you breach that duty of care through negligence, say, by letting your kid smash the digital screen, you are liable for the damage to the bailed property.
That makes total sense. And the contract part, you mentioned implied contracts.
Right. The contract part is how they enforce it on the spot. When a business establishes highly explicit rules of conduct, like Chez printing a strict damage policy directly on the physical menu, or a restaurant posting a large warning sign at the hostess stand, they are establishing a transparent baseline expectation for the transaction.
Oh, I see where this is going. It's basically like clicking, I agree on a software update, isn't it?
Ex-
You know, when you download a new app and there's that massive unreadable wall of text for the terms of service, and you just click agree at the bottom to get to the app.
Right.
By walking into Chez Jou, being handed a menu with that massive warning printed right at the top, sitting down, and then ordering your food, you are legally entering into a dynamic, implied contractual agreement to those exact terms.
That is the perfect analogy. You are opting into their terms of service in real time.
That is fascinating.
Legal analysts point out that by prominently displaying the fee schedule and the liability warning, the restaurant effectively shifts the burden of proof.
How so?
Well, the expectations are set up front before any money changes hands or any food is consumed. If a business makes it abundantly, undeniably clear that breaking a teacup through reckless behavior incurs a replacement fee, the customer cannot feign ignorance or shock when that exact fee appears on the final bill.
Right, because they read it.
They agreed to the terms the moment they ordered the appetizers.
They literally cannot say, I didn't know, because a restaurant can just point to the top of the menu in their hands.
Exactly. And there's one final overarching legal pillar supporting the hospitality industry here, and it's the fundamental right to refuse service.
Oh, right.
Under both federal and state laws governing places of public accommodation, private businesses have the right to refuse service to anyone, provided they are not discriminating against a legally protected class.
Like race or religion.
Right. Protected classes are things like race, religion, national origin, or disability.
And I'm going to guess that unruly behavior or letting your kid run wild is not a legally protected class.
You'd be correct. Being a disruptive patron is not a protected status under civil rights law. Therefore, Restaurants have the absolute ironclad legal right to demand that disruptive parties leave the premises immediately to ensure the safety and comfort of everyone else.
Wow.
And if the property was damaged before they were asked to leave, the implied contract allows the business to tender the bill for that damage.
Okay, the legal bedrock here is incredibly solid. The private property rights, the tort law of negligence, the bailment of the glassware, the implied contracts, it all weaves together logically.
That's a very tight framework.
It is. But this raises a really vital nuance, especially for you listening, if you happen to be a parent of young kids. Let's be real, kids are, by their very nature, clumsy.
Absolutely.
They are literally still developing their gross and fine motor skills. Their spatial awareness is terrible. They knock things over. So where does a restaurant logically and legally draw the line between a normal, innocent childhood accident and a billable offensive negligence?
That is the crucial distinction. And frankly, it's the primary friction point causing all the anxiety for consumers right now.
It's terrifying to think you might get billed for an accident.
Right. So it is vital to understand that the stated goal of these strict policies is not to punish families for existing or to banish children from the dining experience entirely.
Okay.
Zhu explicitly stated in his interviews, quote, "We don't blame the kids. The kids are just being kids."
So it's not an anti-kid policy.
No. He said the policy exists to remind a very small, specific group of parents who are fundamentally not doing their jobs to step up so the restaurant staff can do theirs.
So it's an anti-bad parenting policy?
That's exactly how the industry views it. And to help parse this out, the legal report in Leap magazine provided a brilliant 3-tier categorization framework.
Oh, I love frameworks. Let's walk through these tiers because I think it will relieve a lot of anxiety for parents who might be terrified to take their kids out to eat now.
Definitely. It helps establish the spectrum of liability, showing exactly where a business draws the line between a clumsy moment and a billable invoice.
Okay, so obviously a toddler accidentally knocking over a water glass while trying to grab a piece of bread can't be grounds for a lawsuit. That just has to be the cost of doing business, right?
You've just perfectly described Tier 1, which the framework calls the accidental spill. In this scenario, imagine a toddler reaches for a roll, their hand slips, and they unintentionally bump a standard water glass off the edge of the table. It shatters on the tile floor.
Happens all the time.
Under this legal framework, this is considered ordinary wear and tear. There's no malicious intent from the child, and there is no severe recklessness or negligence from the parent. It is a genuine accident.
So no bill.
No bill. In this case, the restaurant simply sweeps up the glass, brings a new one, and absorbs the cost. Nobody is getting a bill for a slippery glass.
Okay, that is completely reasonable and exactly how society has always functioned. So what escalates us to Tier 2?
Tier 2 is categorized as property damage or vandalism.
Oh, vandalism. That's a strong word.
It is a significant escalation. This is the child actively carving into the wooden table with a steak knife, or taking a crayon and deliberately drawing all over the custom wallpaper.
Right?
This crosses the line from an accident into the intentional or permissive destruction of private property. And the key here is the parent's proximity in an action.
Because they're just watching it happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the parent allowed it to happen or failed to supervise the child closely enough to stop it, the parent has breached their duty of care. Under Tier 2, the parent is held legally and financially liable for the cost of restoring that table or replacing that wallpaper.
Which brings us to Tier 3, which seems to be the most severe category.
It is. Tier 3 is defined as negligent supervision.
Negligent supervision. Okay.
This is the scenario where a child is running completely unsupervised through the dining room aisles and crashes into a waiter, or where a child is jumping on a booth and shatters an expensive piece of equipment, like an electronic POS system.
Like the credit card reader.
Right. This represents a total systemic failure of the parental duty of care in what is essentially a hazardous zone. The parent is billed for the full replacement value of the destroyed items because their active negligence directly resulted in the financial loss.
So if I am understanding the mechanics of this correctly, the determining factor isn't necessarily the broken item itself, but the context of the parent's attention and behavior at the moment the item broke.
Yes.
For example, if a waiter hands a kid a teacup and the kid just drops it by mistake because their hands are small, that falls into Tier 1. It's an accident.
Absolutely.
But the specific $5.47 teacup fee we talked about at Chez Jou was issued because the kid was using the dining booth as a trampoline while the parents completely ignored them.
You've hit the nail on the head. The context of the supervision, or lack thereof, is everything. Negligence is the key trigger.
Makes total sense.
The law and the restaurant's internal policies are looking for the difference between an honest mistake and untamed chaos. The Chez Jou teacup didn't break because of childhood clumsiness. It broke because the parents allowed a piece of furniture to be used improperly and dangerously.
Right.
That is negligent supervision.
Okay, so the legal mechanism is clear, and the boundaries between a Tier 1 accident and a Tier 3 billable offense make a lot of logical sense.
Yeah.
But I really want to dig into the timing of all this. I mean, tort law has been around since the dawn of English common law. It's centuries old.
It is.
Restaurants have always had the legal right to sue for property damage. So why the sudden wave of aggressive menu warnings now? What broke in the modern hospitality ecosystem to make owners suddenly start enforcing this to the penny?
To understand the timing and the urgency, we have to pull back the curtain and look at the brutal business realities of the modern service industry.
Okay.
We are talking about the hidden costs of chaos. The economic squeeze on independent restaurants right now is arguably more severe than it has ever been.
You know, when people hear economic squeeze, they usually just assume the restaurant is making a little less money. How thin are the margins we are actually talking about here?
The profit margins in the restaurant industry are notoriously, terrifyingly razor thin.
Right.
When we look at independent full-service restaurants, we are frequently talking about net profit margins hovering between 3% and 5%.
Wait, 3%.
Yes.
So for every $100 a table spends on food and drinks, after all the bills are paid, the restaurant owner is only keeping $3 to $5 in actual profit.
That is exactly what it means. Let's literally walk through the math of a restaurant's profit and loss statement, because it illustrates why this issue is so existential.
Yeah, please do.
Out of a $100 check, roughly $30 goes immediately to food and beverage costs.
Just the ingredients.
Right. Another $30 goes to labor paying the chefs, the servers, the dishwashers, the hosts. $20 goes to rent, property taxes, and utilities.
So we're already at $80 gone.
Exactly. That leaves $20.
Right.
Then you have to pay for marketing, insurance, credit card processing fees, linen services, and replacing standard broken plates.
Yeah.
By the end of it, the owner's left with maybe $4. Now factor in post-pandemic inflation, skyrocketing wholesale food costs, and rising minimum wages. Independent eateries simply do not have the financial cushion to absorb arbitrary overhead costs for property damage anymore.
So let's apply that 3% margin to the specific items we discussed earlier. Let's hone in on that $327 POS terminal, because I think that perfectly illustrates your point.
It really does.
That machine isn't just a hunk of plastic with a screen. I've seen these things. They are highly specialized pieces of technology. They contain complex software, encrypted processing hardware for swiping credit cards, and they are synced wirelessly to the entire restaurant's network.
Exactly. And this leads to what hospitality experts call the cascading effect, or the operational domino effect.
Okay, the domino effect.
When a child drops and breaks that terminal, the cost to the restaurant isn't just the $327 to buy a new piece of hardware. Breaking that machine actively halts a server's ability to punch in new orders, to fire those orders to the kitchen printers, and to process credit card payments for tables that are trying to leave.
Oh, wow.
It disrupts the entire delicate ecosystem of a dinner rush.
So a broken machine means tables are waiting longer to order, food gets backed up in the kitchen window, and new guests can't be seated at the front door because the old guests literally can't pay their checks to leave the table.
And every single minute of that operational disruption directly eats into the business's daily survival funds.
That's terrifying.
Now, let's tie it back to the profit margin. If a restaurant only makes a 3% net profit, a $300 unexpected expense to replace a broken terminal means they have to sell roughly $10,000 worth of food just to break even on that one child's broken toy.
$10,000.
$10,000 in sales. Just to break even. They cannot afford to eat those costs. The math simply does not allow it.
When you break it down like that, $10,000 in sales just to replace one broken iPad, it puts the financial desperation of the restaurant owner into a completely different perspective.
It really does.
You can see why they're putting warnings on the menus. But according to the sources, it's not just about the money, is it? There are some pretty terrifying physical risks involved here, too.
Worker safety and massive liability risk are huge drivers here, perhaps even more than the property damage. A bustling restaurant dining room is fundamentally a highly dangerous industrial environment masquerading as a leisure space.
Right.
You have wait staff rushing around corners carrying heavy cast iron skillets. In some restaurants, they're carrying flaming clay pots or sizzling fajita platters. They're balancing massive trays full of scalding hot soups, carrying sharp steak knives, and navigating tight spaces with slippery floors.
And then you introduce a chaotic, totally unpredictable element, an uncontrolled toddler running around the aisles right below a server's eye level.
It is a recipe for absolute disaster. If an unsupervised child darts out from under a table and trips a server who is carrying 3 bowls of boiling hot soup, the physical consequences could be catastrophic. We were talking about third-degree burns, permanent scarring, or worse.
That is horrific.
And here is the truly chilling legal reality for the business owner. If that happens, and either the child or the server suffers a severe injury, the restaurant faces immense legal vulnerabilities and workers' compensation claims.
Wait, really? Even if it was entirely the parent's fault for letting the kid run wild in the aisles in the first place?
Yes. In civil court, the business can still be sued by the parents or face claims from their own employees for creating an unsafe environment or failing to adequately manage a known hazard.
Just because the hazard was a kid.
Exactly. The argument would be the restaurant should have stopped the child from running. So the financial penalty these restaurants are imposing on the menu is actually a preventative deterrent.
Did the warning shot.
It is designed to force a behavioral reset and wake the parents up before a tragedy happens. It's a way for the restaurant to document that they take safety seriously.
And beyond the physical danger and the broken equipment, there is also the cost of what the reports call atmosphere damage. I found this concept fascinating because it's something you can't necessarily put a precise dollar amount on, but it destroys businesses all the same.
Atmosphere damage is essentially the hidden cost of a ruined vibe.
Exactly. Think about the geometry of a dining room. A single table of disruptive screaming children or kids blasting cartoons on an iPad at maximum volume can entirely ruin the evening for dozens of surrounding diners.
Totally.
And those surrounding diners are paying the exact same premium prices for a peaceful night out.
In the cold, hard calculations of the hospitality sector, protecting the collective experience of the entire dining room easily outweighs the risk of alienating a single table of non-compliant patrons.
Right. Let's look at the lifetime value of a customer.
Yeah.
If a couple spends $150 on a date night and their experience is ruined by a screaming child at the next table, they aren't going to go online and leave a bad review for the child.
No, they're going to blame the restaurant.
They are going to leave a 1-star review for the restaurant on Yelp or Google, citing a terrible, noisy atmosphere. And more importantly, they will never come back.
The restaurant loses that future revenue forever because of one bad interaction they couldn't control. So charging for physical damages or kicking a disruptive table out is just one tool in the arsenal to protect the bottom line.
Yeah.
But this frustration isn't happening in a vacuum. The sources indicate that this has led to a much broader industry-wide movement that is literally physically reshaping how restaurants operate and who they allow inside.
That's right. The viral Chez Jou menu is really just the tip of the spear. We are seeing a massive systemic shift in how the hospitality industry sets boundaries and implements bans, largely driven by a profound cultural backlash against what experts in the field are calling passive parenting.
Passive parenting.
Yeah. What exactly do they mean by passive parenting in this specific context? Are they just talking about parents who don't yell at their kids?
It refers to a specific modern phenomenon often described by waitstaff as iPad parenting or free-range dining. Hospitality workers are reporting across the board that the core friction in the dining room isn't necessarily the children themselves being children.
Kids have always been noisy.
Exactly. The friction is a modern breed of parents who use screens on full volume to pacify their kids without headphones, or parents who entirely tune out to look at their own phones, completely ignoring their children's disruptive behavior.
They mentally check out of the space, and by default, they force the waitstaff to become the hall monitors and babysitters.
Exactly. The staff are hired to serve food, explain the wine list, and curate an experience, not to discipline someone else's child or navigate a makeshift playground.
Right.
This free-range dining fatigue has reached such a pitch that restaurants are innovating entirely new ways to gatekeep their spaces.
Some of the examples of this gatekeeping in our sources are incredible. Have you heard of the adult surcharge?
Oh, you're referring to the Georgia case?
Yes. The Toco Riverside restaurant in Blue Ridge, Georgia. This place went incredibly viral for implementing a standard $50 adult surcharge.
$50.
$50. And this wasn't hidden in fine print at the bottom of a receipt. It was explicitly aimed at patrons who were deemed unable to parent. If your table was wildly disruptive, boom, an extra $50 on the bill, no questions asked.
It is a direct, unavoidable financial penalty for atmosphere damage.
Exactly.
But many restaurants are deciding that even financial penalties after the fact aren't enough to protect their ambiance because the damage to the other diners has already been done.
That makes sense. The vibe is already ruined.
Right. So they're moving toward outright preemptive restrictions to protect the premium atmosphere economy. There are 3 distinct ways the industry is utilizing these bans.
Let's walk through those 3 methods because I think it perfectly illustrates how the free market is adapting to a cultural problem. What's the first way restaurants are gatekeeping?
The first method is the most direct and the most controversial: the complete ban.
Wow.
This is where an establishment simply prohibits children under a certain age entirely during all operating hours.
Like Nettie's House of Spaghetti in New Jersey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nettie's made national news recently by completely banning all children under the age of 10. They released a statement citing the intense stress of rowdy kids, the noise levels, and the messy cleanups on their staff.
And they aren't the only ones.
No. There's also the Old Fisherman's Grotto in Monterey, California, which is a famous example. They have successfully enforced a long-standing, very strict ban on high chairs, strollers, and crying children.
Interesting.
The reasoning is both to preserve the upscale ambiance and to ensure the physical safety of their very tight dining room floor plan.
And I have to assume the math works out for them. If they turn away a family of 4 because they have a stroller, they are losing maybe 2 $15 kids' meals, but they are freeing up that 4-top table for 4 adults who might each order a $40 entree and 3 rounds of $15 cocktails. The per-head check average goes through the roof.
Precisely. Banning children in upscale environments is mathematically profitable, provided you have the adult demand to fill the seats. Now, if a restaurant doesn't want to go full scorched earth with a complete ban, what is the second method?
According to the sources, the second method is a brilliant compromise known as the sundown rule.
Okay, how does that work?
Under this model, restaurants operate as entirely family-friendly during the breakfast, brunch, and lunch hours. They welcome the strollers and the high chairs, but they establish a strict, non-negotiable cutoff time, say 7 p.m.
And what happens at 7 p.m.?
The entire operational mechanic of the restaurant shifts. They might dim the lights, change the ambient music to something more sophisticated, swap out the paper lunch menus for leather-bound dinner menus, and critically, the space transitions into a strictly adults-only environment. No kids allowed past 7 p.m.
It is an incredibly smart operational pivot. It allows the business to serve both demographics perfectly without ever forcing them to clash in the same room.
Yeah.
You capture the lucrative family market during the day, but you absolutely guarantee an intimate, predictable, and quiet atmosphere for the high-spending evening date night crowd.
And what about the third method? Because not every restaurant can completely overhaul its vibe at 7 p.m.
The third method achieves a similar goal physically through architecture: adults-only zones.
Oh, physical zones?
Yes, larger establishments with the square footage to do so will actually divide their floor plans. Families with young children are deliberately seated in designated high-energy areas.
Like where?
This might be a lively outdoor patio or a specific section of booths near the kitchen doors where it's already allowed. Meanwhile, the main intimate dining room or the bar area is strictly reserved for adults.
It's fascinating that the hospitality market is fragmenting this way. For so long, the conventional wisdom in business, especially restaurants, was that you had to be everything to everyone. You had to please every single customer who walked through the door, or you were failing.
Right, the customer is always right.
Exactly. But instead of trying to please everyone and inevitably failing, because you can't have a romantic anniversary dinner next to a screaming toddler, these restaurants are choosing to serve one specific audience exceptionally well.
They are actively curating the environment, and they are becoming entirely unapologetic about it.
But telling parents they can't bring their kids, or literally handing a mother a bill for her child's bad behavior, is a deeply, deeply emotional issue.
Oh, it strikes a nerve.
You aren't just critiquing a customer, you are striking right at the heart of how people raise their families. It touches raw nerves. So, how is society actually reacting to this shift? What does the cultural divide look like outside of the restaurant walls?
It is a fierce and deeply polarized divide. If you just look at the social media reaction to these policies, it looks like an absolute firestorm of outrage. The critics, particularly parenting advocacy groups and mommy bloggers, argue vehemently that these policies create a hostile, anti-child public environment.
What are their main substantive concerns beyond just feeling insulted?
They argue that it places an immense unfair amount of anxiety on parents who are just trying to integrate their families into society. They point out that children are, biologically speaking, inherently unpredictable. Threatening parents with a couple $100s in fines or public shaming if a toddler suddenly throws a tantrum just forces families into isolation. It tells them they aren't welcome in public.
That makes sense.
Furthermore, they highlight a very valid concern. This is disproportionately stressful for families raising neurodivergent children or kids with developmental delays. For those families, behavioral management isn't as simple as just telling a child to sit still or threatening them with a timeout.
That is a very valid perspective that we have to acknowledge. For a parent of an autistic child who might suddenly struggle with sensory overload in a loud, bright restaurant and begin to vocalize, seeing a harsh warning sign about fines for noise could feel incredibly exclusionary.
Absolutely.
It turns what should be a nice attempt at a family meal into a high-stakes, anxiety-inducing ordeal.
It does, and those critics argue that businesses choosing to cater to the public should budget for reasonable wear and tear and exhibit much more grace toward families who are just trying to exist in public spaces.
But the hospitality and etiquette experts push back on that narrative, don't they?
They do, quite strongly. They recenter the conversation away from the child's rights and back onto communal respect and hygiene.
Like the diaper incident.
Exactly.
Right.
Diane Gossman, a national etiquette expert cited in the research, points directly to the undeniable hygiene issues, like the diapers on the tables. Her argument is simple and devastatingly logical. No customer wants to eat off a table that was just used as a biological changing station, regardless of how well it was wiped down afterward.
Of course not.
Permitting that kind of behavior hurts the business irreparably and violates the fundamental social contract of a shared eating space.
And then there's the perspective of Jan Goss, which I found incredibly insightful when I was reading through the sources. She is a professional development expert, but more importantly, she has fostered over 50 children in her lifetime.
Wow, 50 children.
50. So she knows a thing or two about managing chaotic kids in public settings.
Her perspective is vital because she completely reframes the argument. She argues that public spaces are essential teaching moments. She emphasizes that requiring respect and decorum in a dining room isn't about being restrictive, cruel, or anti-child. It's about teaching children how to function in society. Enforcing boundaries allows everyone to share the space safely.
Right, think about it. Kids aren't born inherently knowing restaurant etiquette. They don't emerge from the womb knowing which fork to use or that they shouldn't scream indoors. They have to learn it.
Exactly.
And if the parents refuse to enforce those boundaries and the restaurant is legally or culturally not allowed to enforce those boundaries, the kid never learns how to exist in a shared public space.
They miss the lesson entirely.
But here is the most surprising part of the whole deep dive for me. When you look past the loud internet outrage on Twitter or Facebook, and you look at the actual polling data, the public consensus is kind of shocking.
The data tells a completely different story than the social media comment sections would have you believe.
It really does.
Consumer surveys conducted extensively in both the US and the UK reveal that greater than 60% of adults actually support adults-only dining options and strict behavioral policies with financial penalties.
Over 60%. That is a clear majority. And, crucially, the sources note that a massive portion of this support comes directly from parents themselves.
It makes perfect sense when you unpack the psychology of it. If you are a parent who has spent $100 on a babysitter, worked overtime all week, and finally managed to get a quiet, predictable night out away from your own kids, the absolute last thing you want is to sit next to someone else's screaming child while you eat your steak.
They are paying for an escape. They want the curated adult experience just as much as anyone else. So the big question is, does this hardline stance actually work for the businesses in practice? Let's bring it all the way back to where we started. Chez Jou in Foster City, did his incredibly strict menu warning and his itemized bills ruin his business? Did the internet outrage bankrupt him?
Not at all. In fact, it was a resounding success.
Real.
Yeah. Sue reported that since implementing the explicit written rule, incidents of bad behavior and property damage have dropped precipitously. The warning acted as a highly effective deterrent.
That's great.
It worked so well, and the support from his core high-paying clientele was so strong that he actually plans to expand the exact same strict liability policy to his new restaurant locations as he grows his business.
So what does this all mean for the future of going out to eat? It's almost like the restaurant industry is finally dusting off and enforcing the old you break it, you buy it rule from antique stores, but they're applying it to the entire holistic dining experience.
That's exactly what it is.
You break the equipment, you buy it. You break the ambiance and ruin the night for everyone else, you pay for it.
It is the formalization of accountability. For decades, the restaurant industry relied on unspoken social pressure to maintain order. Now that social pressure has failed, they are relying on implied contracts and financial penalties. The era of the dining room serving as a consequence-free playroom for unsupervised children is decisively drawing to a close.
Okay, let's briefly recap this journey for you because we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with the wild viral story of Chez Jou billing parents hundreds of dollars for shattered digital tech and carved up wooden tables.
Right.
We unpacked very solid legal grounds, the centuries-old laws of civil torts, the duty of care, the concept of bailment, and implied contracts that give private businesses the absolute ironclad right to charge for negligent supervision.
The legal foundation is very real.
And we examined the brutal business realities like the razor-thin 3% profit margins and the terrifying physical safety risks that are driving this massive industry-wide pushback against passive parenting.
It is an incredibly complex issue, constantly balancing the messy realities of raising a family with the brutal economic survival of small businesses. But as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, because the implications of this go far beyond just where you eat dinner.
I'm intrigued.
If we as a society are beginning to legally and culturally accept that private businesses can directly fine patrons on the spot for the atmosphere damage and the physical disruptions caused by their unsupervised children, how long will it be before this exact same financial model extends beyond restaurants?
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought of that. Where else could this go?
Think about all the other premium shared spaces we inhabit. Imagine boarding a commercial flight, entering a movie theater for a highly anticipated film, or checking into a luxury hotel, and being required to sign a terms of service agreement that automatically bills the credit card you have on file for a disruption fee if your child crosses a certain decibel level or runs down the airplane aisle.
That is wild.
The restaurant dining room may not be the end of this trend. It may just be the first frontier in the direct contractual monetization of public etiquette.
That is a wild, slightly dystopian thought to leave on. The literal monetization of etiquette. Next time you click I agree on a menu or a reservation app, you might really want to read the fine print. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive into the dining room divide. We will catch you on the next one.
As our host discussed, what we are witnessing isn't just a petty squabble over a broken teacup or a ruined tabletop. It is a fundamental renegotiation of the shared public space. For decades, the hospitality industry operated under an unwritten rule that the business would quietly absorb the collateral damage of unruly behavior as an inevitable cost of doing business. But in an era defined by razor-thin 3% profit margins, post-pandemic economic pressures, and an understandable fatigue with passive iPad parenting, that old paradigm has officially fractured. As we've broken down today, the legal mechanisms supporting these changes are centuries old, rooted in private property rights, tort law, bailment, and implied contracts. When a restaurant prints a clear liability policy on its menu, it isn't making an empty threat. It is establishing a real-time contract. By ordering that appetizer, you are clicking I agree to their terms of service. The successful implementation of these policies at establishments like Chez Jou proves that financial deterrents work. For businesses, it is a matter of pure economic survival and worker safety. For parents, it serves as a high-stakes reminder that public spaces are dynamic classrooms for social decorum. But as we leave you today, consider the broader horizon. If the restaurant dining room is the first frontier for the direct contractual monetization of public etiquette, where does it end? Will we soon see automatic disruption fees billed to our credit cards by airlines, luxury hotels, or movie theaters if a child exceeds a certain decibel level? The line between public accommodation and private enforcement is blurring, and next time you sit down to dine, you might want to look a little closer at the fine print. This podcast is supported by the generous commitment of our sponsors, and we extend a special thank you to HRB Universal. Their dedication to providing comprehensive resources and promoting excellence is key to empowering professionals across the culinary and hospitality industries. We also want to acknowledge the Plate and Pour Collective Equity Partner Program. This initiative exemplifies a true commitment to fostering shared success and equitable growth within the food and beverage sector, helping entrepreneurs build a more inclusive and thriving future. The journey to the C-suite is fueled by innovation, relentless dedication, and the right network. We encourage you to engage with the resources and support offered by our sponsors. For details on how to connect with HRB Universal and the Plate and Pour Collective Equity Partner Program, visit hrbuni.com or simply search Google for HRB Universal. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode of From Kitchen to C-Suite, where we will continue to explore captivating topics designed to elevate your career and entrepreneurial drive. Whether you're commuting or chilling on the couch, we've got you covered. Headphone on the go? Subscribe and listen via Riverside and from kitchen to c-suite.com or our main hub at hrbuni.com. You can also search for us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Deezer, or wherever you get your daily audio fix. TV on the big screen? Level up your experience by watching the From Kitchen to C-Suite podcast on the HRB TV network. Lightbulb pro tip. If you use Roku or Fire TV, simply search for HRB TV network to start streaming our video episodes directly from your living room. Until our next broadcast, continue to innovate, protect your margins, and strive for superior achievement. We'll catch you on the next one.